Okay, I think we will have just about everybody now. So thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to London Business School. This is probably not your first online event with us, so welcome back if that's the case. And today, Alessandra and I are here to go through some top tips for you on how to submit a strong MBA application. So my name is Charlotte and I'm the Senior Global Recruitment Manager for the Early Careers Masters in Finance and MBA Programmes. And I am joined today by Alessandra Gazzola, who is the Senior Recruitment and Admissions Manager for the MBA Programme.
Hi, everyone.
So today we are going to take you through some key tips for your application. We have purposely put this session in today because we are aware that lots of people will be preparing their application ahead of round 2 on the 5th of January. So we want to ensure that over the festive period, you have lots of takeaways to work on with your application. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you should be thinking about yourself, some self-reflection, and also how myself and my team will support you with the research of London Business School and any application preparation you need to do before submission. And then Alessandra will talk you through the application process and timeline, as well as all of the application requirements. We have plenty of time today for Q&A, so please do start to send your questions through on the Q&A box as and when you have them. So we're going to start with you today, and we have some questions to help us to get to know you. So if we could please launch the first poll. Okay, so our first question for you today is, how long have you been researching an MBA at LBS? You can select 0 to 3 months, 3 to 9, or 9 plus. Lots of people still voting, thank you. Very active audience today. Okay, so it looks like that 3 to 9 month period is where the majority of you are at. Some even longer than that, which is great. It means that you were researching pre-COVID, so you may have even met us in your home countries and not only virtually. And for some of you, it will definitely be virtual if you've only been researching for 0 to 3 months. Excellent, thank you, that's helpful. And if we can launch the next question, which is, when are you preparing an application for? So lots of people for round 2 on the 5th of January. The other options are round 3 or round 4. It might be that you're not applying this year and you'll be applying the next year for the 2022 intake. So you may not be applying at all, you're just here to see. Okay, and as expected, the large majority of you are applying for round 2, so that's great. Hopefully we can give you lots of top tips today for that application. And final question, please. Finally, what do you want to hear more about today? And you can select as many of these as you can. Is it the general approach to the application, how you bring your authentic self, a particular part of the application, such as GMAT or essays, interview, references? It's a pretty, essays. I think we need to speak on essays a lot. That's fine.
No worries, we will cover them later on.
Yeah.
Very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. That really helps us to know where to help you today. So let's start with that general approach and bring in your authentic self to the application. I'll just close those. Brilliant. So thinking about you, so what's really key before you start to put your application together is you take some time to do some self-reflection. Why are you considering postgraduate education? Why business education? What do you want to get from the experience? And why is London Business School the best place for you? So that self-reflection is really key before you start to actually write anything for your application. So diving into that a little bit further, these are some things that we are really looking for in an applicant. We're looking for somebody who is really collaborative, who is going to make the most of the diverse class that we create on our MBA programme, who is looking to learn alongside others and support others through their learning as well. We're looking for people with some self-awareness. So really understanding where you're at now, where you want to be, and the path that you might need to take to ensure that you get there. And finally, global mindset is something that we talk about a lot at London Business School. It's because we have a very international community, and we are looking for people who, even if you do not yet have lots of international experience, that's okay, but that you can show us throughout your application that you are looking to expand on that, and why. Is it because you want to work in a different region? Is it because you want to work in international teams? Or is it just that you understand the importance of learning from others, from other nationalities and other cultures? So I think there are three things that we're looking for, and hopefully you can see yourself in some of those. But through that self-reflection process before you start your application, ensure that there are things that you consider, and ensure that that means that you do fit to London Business School and what we're looking for. Consider your motivations for application. So generally we will find that lots of people applying are all looking for leadership development, to enhance their network and to gain global perspectives. But what do you want to get from the MBA? Is it that you are looking to accelerate in the career path that you are on? Is it that you're looking to transition into a whole new sector or industry or a different role? Or do you have entrepreneurial ambitions? And then when you've figured out what your motivations are, that's when you can then start to find the right business school for you. And if it's LBS, then we are going to want to know why London Business School is the place that you can take that journey and ensure that you achieve within it. So that's a self-reflection piece that we would recommend that you start with. And from there, you can then really dive further into the school research and application preparation. So get to know us. First of all, I can tell you a little bit now about who we are, and you can ensure that this really fits with what you're looking for. So at London Business School, we are particularly proud of these four things. First of all, our world-class faculty, who are committed to research and providing new cutting-edge research to our students on a weekly basis. Next up is our outstanding peer group. So we ensure that we recruit from all over the world to combine top prospective students to create those final classes. It's very diverse, as I said, not only in nationality, but in sector and background. And we really try to sort of stretch that meaning of diversity when we are putting the class together. Our London location is like no other. Our students really benefit from the London location in terms of recruiters and employers that will come onto campus, also in terms of the ease for them to have coffee chats with people within London. London, of course, is a hub of business and finance and other key sectors, and it's also just a fantastic place to live and build your life as well. And finally, the global mindset, which, like I've already mentioned, is something that we thrive on and expand each year with new nationalities joining our classes each year. So how can you find out more about London Business School and dive further into each of those key areas? First of all, on our website, we have a very comprehensive and very thorough website where you can find out more about the programme, about the electives that you can study within the MBA programme, about the community. You will see a list of all of our student ambassadors for each of our programmes on there, so you can start to connect with them. You can find out more about our community through pages such as Women at London Business School, Black Students at London Business School, the LGBTQ+ community at London Business School as well. So lots of information on the web. We also have a great student and admissions blog, which you can access via the website. You want to be under the Our Community section to find that as well. On top of that, find out more about what London Business School is about. We have Think at LBS, which is a fantastic place to go and read more articles and more faculty research and information on that. So really delve into who we are at LBS. I've mentioned the alumni and ambassadors and the social media and blogs. And finally, attend events. So you have attended one today, which is fantastic. But we have many more events where we can connect you with the Career Centre, with alumni and current students, to ensure that you really understand who we are. So when you're doing all of that research and tapping into all of those resources, what exactly should you be finding out? So program structure and the electives and courses on the program, of course, are really important. Find out more about the class size and the peer group on the MBA program. The campus location is definitely important if you're considering a move to London. Student life. So have a look at the student clubs that you can be involved in on campus, and that might be something that you want to talk about in your application as well. Which clubs are you excited about? What would you like to contribute to those clubs? And find out more about the faculty and the way that we deliver the education that we offer. The Career Centre opportunities. So we do, as I said, host events throughout the year with the Career Centre, but also these are the sorts of questions that you can ask ambassadors and alumni when you connect with them to find out how they made the most of the Career Centre resources on campus. The experiential learning elements is another part that you can find out more about, such as the global business experiences and the London CAP projects. And finally, cost is really important, and to research funding a little bit further and how you would fund your MBA. Okay, so hopefully that's a good starting point and some good building blocks to your application. And now I'm going to hand over to Alessandra, who will run through the application process and timeline with you.
Yes, thank you, Charlotte. Hi again, everyone. So Charlotte mentioned I'm going to go over a little bit about our application process and also give you some tips and suggestions for your application. Before we dive into each component of the application itself, maybe we can talk a little bit about the process. As you know, once you submit your entire applications, the application will be reviewed by the admissions committee, and they will basically do an initial review of everything you have submitted, and they will make a decision of whether to shortlist you or not for interview. If you are selected for interview, then you will have an interview either in person or virtual with one of our alumni interviewers all around the world. After the interviewer will send us back an interview feedback, and then the admissions committee will re-review your entire application in light of the interview feedback, and they will make a final decision on your application. The entire process usually lasts between 9 and 12 weeks, depending on which round you apply. And in the next slide, we can see the deadlines for the MBA 2023 class. So for the intake that starts next August. As you know already, it's clearly known from the poll earlier, next deadline is on the 5th of January, so round 2, then we have round 3 at the beginning of March, and round 4 at the end of April. As I said, depending when you apply, the process might be a little bit longer, might be a little bit shorter. Yeah, in terms of requirement, so there are quite a few things that you need to submit as part of your application. My recommendation is always, when you have decided which school you want to apply to, make sure you also research the deadlines and you make a plan. Kind of you write down your timeline to complete your applications and decide when you want or would like to submit. In that way, you can kind of build a plan and you can make sure you hit the deadline that you would like to hit. And, you know, sometimes completing some of these elements, especially preparing for a GMA, for example, can take some time. So it's good that you prepare in advance and that you have a clear idea of which round you want to target and when you're aiming to submit your application. If you would like to apply for the MBA program at London Business School, there are quite a few things that will need to be submitted, and these are the main items, or most of all, basically. You will need to submit a one-page CV and complete the online application form that you can find on the website. You need to submit 2 reference forms, essays, the GMAT or GRE test, and original transcripts or scanned copies of your transcripts from your undergraduate degrees or masters, any previous education. In terms of the application form, I, again, would recommend you to not underestimate how long it takes to complete our application form, because our application form has quite a few essay-style answers that needs to be completed, and it might take longer than what you imagine to complete this answer. So just make sure that before you start working on your application, you do have a look at the application form and start thinking about your answers, what you want to say. So then when you get to complete the form, you have already an idea in mind of what you would like to say. In terms of GMAT GRE, we're still requiring the GMAT and GRE test, and that needs to be submitted at the time of application. We haven't changed this requirement in light of COVID, as all test providers have made provision to get candidates to take the test online, and many centers are now kind of open around the world, depending where you are. But so if it's not possible for you to take the test in person, then you should have the online option. Essays. Next slide. In terms of essays, I saw earlier in the pool that this is one of the things you really want to hear about. So maybe we can spend a little bit more on talking about the essays. So the essays are definitely a big part of the application itself. It's quite an important part of the application, but I wouldn't say the essays are the most important part or something like that. I think all items of the application itself are important, and the admissions committee, when they look at applications, they really take an holistic view of applications. So they consider everything that you submit as part of the application package. However, I will say essays are a quite important part, because the essays are the place where you can elaborate your motivations, your aspirations, why you want to do the MBA, why London Business School. You can elaborate all of that into one place, and through the essays, you can tell the admissions committee your story, basically, and you can also tell them a little bit about yourself. In a way, through the essays, you can distinguish yourself from other candidates, again, because through the essays, you can give a glimpse of yourself as a professional and as a person to the committee. I always recommend to prepare a lot before start writing the essays. Think about what you want to say, the story that you want to pass on to the committee before you start writing. It's much easier to write 5,000 words than 500 or 1,000. So make sure you really have a clear idea of what you want to say and how also you want to say. Be prepared of changing your mind, so of having draft 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of your essays, and then perhaps scrapping them all and start from scratch again. That's absolutely normal, don't worry. As you go along, as you think about the messaging, as you write your essays, you might change your mind, and you might realize that you want to say different things. So that's absolutely normal, but do prepare and do start thinking at the questions in advance. Make sure also your essays are tailored to the school you're applying to. After having been in admissions for quite some time now, I can assure you that it's very easily, generic essays can be spotted very easily, and we can very easily recognize if you have reused some of your essays for multiple schools. So a suggestion and a tip will be to really tailor the essays to the school you are applying to, because that will really show the committee that you care and that you really put effort into writing your essays. Make sure you also proofread your essays so that you don't confuse maybe school names in there. Make sure you write the correct name of school. But yes, make sure you proofread, because if you send essays that maybe are sloppy or full of mistakes, that doesn't give a good impression of you to the committee. So make sure you really are sure that the essays are error-proof and they are all good to go. And then my final recommendations in terms of essays is to ask someone close to you to read them, and also ask someone not that close to you, maybe an acquaintance, to read your essays. Your friend, your family member, the person close to you can tell you if those essays or that essay reflect who you are as a person and reflect your personality, while the person that doesn't know you, that was not close to you, will be able to tell you whether they make sense. Sometimes, you know, the story, the message that you want to put across makes sense in your mind because you have it on the back of your mind, and you've thought about that many times. You have written it down and so on. But maybe in someone else's mind or in their eyes, the story doesn't make that sense, it's not that clear. So that's why it is important that also someone that doesn't really know what you want to do, what you want to achieve, read them, because they can tell you whether they really make sense. And then final tip, sorry, Charlotte, final tip, I will say there are no right or wrong answers when they come to essays. Make sure you really write what you want to write. Contrary to what a lot of forums online say, there is not a specific format. The only thing that we ask is that you actually answer the question that the essays ask. But apart from that, do not write what you think is best for you and what really represents you, because the admissions committee wants to get to know you, they want to get to know you, and they want to make sure that we as a school are able to support your career goals and your development. Now a little bit about referees and the reference form. So I mentioned that as part of your application, you need to select 2 referees, and they will need to submit 1 form each. Many times we get asked who a candidate should select as a referee. My advice is always to prefer content rather than job title. So do make sure you choose someone that will dedicate the time to write your reference form, and that really can tell us how you are as a professional, how you work under pressure, how you build a relationship with your colleagues. Many times we receive references from CEOs, CFOs, and so on, very senior executives, which is great. But at the same time, sometimes those executives don't have much time to write references, or maybe they've worked with the candidates for only 1 project some years back, and maybe the content that they can provide us is not as valuable as maybe a direct manager that works with the candidates on a daily basis for some time. We understand that sometimes you don't want to disclose to your direct managers that you are planning to leave, and that is absolutely fine. If that's the case, you can think a client maybe as a possible referee, or a colleague from another department with whom you have worked very closely for some time. And then finally, I'll just give you some tips for your interview. As I saw in the poll, that was another area that you really wanted to know more about. So at LBS, we will have only 1. So if you are selected for interview for the LBS MBA, we will ask you to have only 1 interview, and the interview will take place in your location, if it is in person, but also if it is virtual. We will try to match you with an alumni interviewer in your city or in your region. I always recommend candidates to prepare for their interviews. It's not a job interview, but it is an important interview, because from the interview, it can depend the outcome of your application. So it's very important that you go prepared, that you know what you've written in your application, that you know your story and your message, because the interviewer will have access to your entire application package. So can go through your essays, what you've told us are your hobbies, your connection with the school, and so on. So do make sure you prepare. Also make sure to prepare some examples of, for example, leadership, teamwork, successes, failures you have had in your careers, because also those are things that might come up during the interview. As I mentioned, the interview will take place in your region, if it's virtual, or in your city and place where you're based, if it is in person. We do ask also interviewers to ask a short case to candidates. And that will be basically an impromptu presentation that you will have to do. But there's nothing really to worry about, nothing you need to prepare for it. The topics are usually of the impromptu case are usually of general business, what's happening in the world at the moment. And we just want to see through that how you think on the spot, how you can come up with ideas or opinions or suggestions there and then, because that is something that you will need to do a lot when at school and in classes, because classes at LBS are really dynamic, are really interactive, and faculty do ask a lot to students to also participate in the discussion.
Alessandra, our most upvoted question is around interviews, so I thought we should approach it now rather than once we've moved.
Oh, okay, sure. I haven't looked at the questions.
It's on the alumni interview, and whether it's a personal interview and personal questions or case study based.
No, there will be general questions. I mean, it will. So the personal questions will not be be a case. There will only be like a short presentations that you will need to complete, and the alum will choose the topic of this short presentation, this short case. But as I said, if you read the news, if you watch TV, and if you keep up to date with current happenings in the world, then you will be absolutely fine. Is that what they were looking for, I think?
I think so. Thank you. We will move on to final point.
And then finally, a little bit about funding. Just because, of course, doing MBA is a big investment. We know very well that. And so it's very important that you research business schools as you research your funding options. You wouldn't want to go through the entire application process, get an offer, and then having to decline that offer at your dream school because of funding. So it's very important that you research anything that is available to you in terms of funding, or how to fund your program and your possible stay abroad while you're researching schools. At LBS, we do work with loan providers that support students with loans for tuition fees and part of the living expenses. We do offer scholarships. We have a wide range of scholarships that we offer based on merit, so on the merit of your application. And then we also have a business development team that can help you with your business case to your employer for possible sponsorships. The students that join LBS are a mix of self-funded and sponsored students, but the majority of them are also self-funded. And they fund the program through a combination of savings, loans, some scholarships, whether from the school or external scholarships, and so on. I will also recommend you to research your local scholarships opportunities. Many governments, or there might be many foundations that offer support to study abroad or to do masters. But there might not be that promoted. So maybe they are not mainstream. So do a little bit of research and have a look, because you might discover there are more things that you could apply for than what you think. Okay, and more information about fundings can be found on our website under MBA How to Fund My Program, and from there you can also visit our loan providers web pages, and you can see all the scholarships that we have available. I believe now we're going to move on to Q&A. So if there is anything specific that you have asked, we can cover that during the Q&A.
Thank you, Alessandra, for all those admissions insights. I'm sure that's been really helpful. Now, our participants have been able to vote questions, so we have some very popular questions right at the top of the Q&A, which is definitely helpful.
Okay.
I think we can tackle the top one around. I think that a few business schools have shared that they had a busy round one. And so participants perhaps are feeling that will then have impact on other rounds and the competitive nature of our following rounds this year. Alessandra, have you got anything to start with on that?
Yeah, of course. So it is true, we've had a very big round one this year, bigger than in previous years. And also in terms of quality, we have received a huge number of excellent applications. It's been quite tough actually going through them and making decisions. So we've had to make some very tough decisions, unfortunately. We don't know whether that's down to COVID directly, or it's just a nature of the year that's been bigger. You know, every year we have different numbers of applicants that apply in round one, round two, or round three, four. Not one year is the same, so that changes. There might be a correlation between number of applications and COVID. However, we haven't really noticed that specific connection. I will advise the candidates to not focus so much on numbers and on probabilities of getting admitted, depending on the number of applicants we have. I always recommend candidates to really focus on submitting the best applications they can, because that is what will make your application stand out. If you don't submit a good application, you will not be shortlisted for interview. You will not get an offer regardless of the year, regardless of the competitiveness of the round. It doesn't matter. We don't go by quota. We don't just fill spot to fill them. We just select candidates on the basis of quality. So it's really important for you as a candidate to think of your application and to really make sure you submit the best application you can, so it can stand out and you can make a competitive case to the admissions committee.
Thank you. And I will just add to that. I think it's a really good point on trying not to consider, you know, who your competitors will be at LBS, and also try not to consider what are LBS looking for specifically in this round at this point on this year. Just be your authentic self, and then we will focus on how you fit within the class, or if you fit within the class. I think it's really important that you try not to, you know, tick any boxes or anything like that, and just tell us who you are, why LBS is the school for you, and take some time to think about that. But that's all you have to do, is just tell us, really.
Absolutely. And on that point, you know, remember that every school is different, has a different spirit, has a different community, has a different vibe. And you need to make sure that the school you end up going to is a school that reflects who you are and that really fit in with you. It might be that LBS is a great fit for some candidates, but not so much for others. And that is absolutely fine. That's the nature of business school. Academics, faculties are excellent everywhere in many schools, but really what makes a school different is the vibe, the culture, the spirit, the way in which faculty interacts with students, perhaps. So make sure that the school really fits with you and it's a reciprocal fit.
Thank you. Okay, another highly voted question is around the application form and some of the short essays that are asked on there.
Yeah.
The question is, what would the admissions committee appreciate? Short and direct answers, or long essays that would provide additional layers to one's personality and background? That's
a very good question. I will say halfway. Not too sure that the answer doesn't provide enough information, not too long that it will fill up the whole space and will be too much to read. Still remember that those answers, those questions, Q&As are within an application form, and the application form in itself is quite long. So you might want to keep some information for another part of the application form. Like, for example, we do ask a lot of information about your current role and responsibilities, but then we also ask you later in the form about your hobbies, what you do in the spare time. So no need to condense everything into one answer. Make sure you spread them out. And that's why I also mentioned earlier, have a look at the application form, go through it, see what we ask, so you can prepare mentally in your back of your mind about you want to say, kind of what you want to say in which section.
Thank you. And remember that every single question is asked for a reason. So answer every question, consider every question. But as Alessandra said, if there's capacity for 400 words, you don't have to try and fill all 400. But do consider every question.
Yeah, I would say a good comprehensive answer. They give enough information. It expresses what you want to say and the key information that you want to pass on, but it's not overly long, and that's so that it results in a lot of additional information that is not necessary.
Thank you. Okay, a question around academic criteria. Do the admissions committee give more weight to the GMAT, university, or GPA?
So I wouldn't say we give more weight to one rather than the other, but we look at all of them together. So we will look at all your, I will call them your academic credentials, and the admissions committee will evaluate them as a whole. So for example, if you have a lower than average GMAT or a GPA that is quite low for whatever reason, then the committee will definitely look at a stronger GMAT to counterbalance that. Contrary, if you have a low GMAT, but you have a very strong GPA, the admissions committee might make the balance between two. So we look at them all together holistically, and we assess academic credentials in that way.
Thank you. Just one more point on GMAT before we move on. Somebody is explaining that they've already taken it and they now would like to retake, which is great. We would encourage that if you think you can improve your score. And the test is on January 4th, which is fine because the deadline is January 5th. So as long as you have taken the test beforehand, I think on the online test, it's an immediate result now. But if you're not doing that, then you can perhaps submit your unofficial score. And we will know to await your official score. But we would encourage retaking before the deadline if you're not happy with your score, if you think that you can try to improve that. And allow lots of time, consider that. We often, specifically around this round 2 period, find that people will take their GMAT quite last minute and then not be happy with their score and not have the time to retake. So I would consider that in your timescale planning as well. Okay, let's have a look for some other questions. This is a good question, Alessandra, on essays. How optional is the second essay? Would your application be discounted if you don't write a second essay? What percentage of applicants write both essays?
Oh, that's a very good question. So the second essay is optional, so effectively 100% optional. It's up to you really if you want to use it or not, and how you want to use it. If you decide to go for it. I don't have the percentage how many candidates complete the second essay versus they don't. It's really subjective. It depends. It really depends from one candidate to the other. And as I said, it depends how you can decide how to use it and what to say to us. For example, some candidates might decide to use the second essays to tell us about a personal story, something that happened in their life that shaped who they are. Some other use it for telling us about a bad GMAT attempt why it didn't go well, to tell us a bit more about the GMAS and the tests and so on. Some others use the essays to tell us how they are planning to contribute to the community. So it's very different. It depends. My advice on this will be that the second essay is absolutely optional. Having said all of that, we do have candidates that don't submit a second essay, but I think for you, you can look at it as an opportunity to say something more to the committee that you haven't told them already before. If you need to use your second essay as a repetition of your CV or application form, I will say there's not much point. But if you need to use your second essays to add something extra, something else to your application that will help the admission committee understand you as a person or professional a little bit more, then absolutely do use it. But it's really up to you as you want to shape that essay and if you want to use it or not.
Thank you. 2 questions on rounds and when to apply. So let's go with the first one. Is it important to apply either by January in round 2 or later in round 3? Is there a difference in terms of selection process on when to apply? I think what's really important, if I start with this one, is that you apply when your application is ready. Do not rush an application just to meet a deadline. You can only apply once per year. So, you just have the one shot. So give it your best shot and ensure that you are putting your best foot forward with your application, and try not to rush your application just for a specific round would be the first piece of advice. Alessandra, anything to add?
No, I agree with that. As Charlotte mentioned, don't rush an application just to rush it. Make sure you are ready and happy to submit. Only thing to bear in mind is about scholarships. The further we go with the cycle, the less scholarships are available. So if you're thinking about financial aid, it's better to submit earlier rather than later. But even in that case, that doesn't guarantee you will get a scholarship, but just in case, something to keep at the back of your mind.
Thank you. And the next question is around whether the applications are reviewed after each deadline or on a rolling basis. So generally speaking, after each deadline. However, as we said, if your application is ready, then sometimes it can be worth submitting it, even before the deadline. You don't have to wait for the deadline date. You can submit it a few weeks before. It doesn't mean that decisions will come any earlier, but it might mean that the admissions committee can read your application with fresh eyes before, the bulk of applications after a deadline. Anything to add there, Alessandra?
No, all good. It was quite comprehensive. Okay. I think perhaps we can talk a little bit about the classroom experience with the pandemic, how that has changed. Maybe I'll start and then Charlotte, you jump in whenever. So the question is, how has the pandemic affected classroom experiential learning, and what has LBS done to ensure students get quality experience virtually? So yes, we have introduced basically hybrid school, which is a hybrid model of teaching in which we have a group of students in the classroom and a group of students on Zoom from home. And basically the students in the classroom are called roomies, and then we have the Zoomies on Zoom. They are all connected, they are through the same link. So even the students in the classroom will need to have a laptop or an iPad connected to Zoom so they can all have the same experience. And the faculty will have camera, microphones. We have fitted our lecture theaters with professional equipment so the faculty can be clearly heard and they can deliver their sessions almost like all students were in the room, as the faculty also have access to interactive boards and so on, very fancy technological things. Students will get also to work as part of a group during lectures and as they are all connected through Zoom, and that has been quite positive received, as it creates still that collaboration between students, even though they are not all of them in the same room. So far, the feedback has been really positive from students. They've been really pleased with that, and we are obviously looking at develop this hybrid model even further until we cannot resume full in-person teaching. In terms of experiential learning, also those had to be moved to a virtual format for the time being. Obviously, given the current climate and global context, it's not really easy to travel abroad, especially with a large group of students, and we have a duty of care towards our students, so we cannot just take them abroad with all the risks that entails. So those for the time being have been moved to a virtual format. We have tried to recreate, for example, the global business experiences or the London Cup format online, and students still had the opportunity to connect with alumni organizations in other parts of the world or in the city just through a virtual environment.
And all I would add is that if you want to learn more about that, then that's a great question for our student ambassadors who are currently, undertaking the hybrid model and have the whole student experience to share with you. So our student ambassadors are all listed on the website under the ambassador page. You can filter them by sector, by club, whatever you want to ask, you can filter them and find the right people to speak to. We have nearly 100 MBA ambassadors, so there's lots of experience there between them. So please do reach out. They are waiting for your questions. I saw a question about a recommendation. So you can submit an informal recommendation as well as the 2 professional references on the application. We do have a form for that. So if you have a good relationship with a current student or an alumni of the school, then they can submit an informal recommendation for you. To do that, they need to email mba@london.edu and request the form, and we will send it over to them and we will attach it to your application. So mba@london.edu should be nice and easy to remember. Looking for some further questions here. We still have some time and there are so many questions, so thank you for those. Alessandra, we've got some further reference questions actually, which might be useful. Somebody who is working within a family business, who would be an appropriate person to be the referee? And how can a candidate detail their impact on a family business?
Yeah, of course. Well, I guess it will depend on the size of the family business. There are big organizations that, have a lot of employees, directors, and so on. So perhaps you can choose someone beside the immediate family, obviously, to be your referee. If maybe the organization is smaller, again, maybe you can look at the client or someone that's worked with you closely on a project. And that can talk to us about you as a professional and as well as a person. I think there are many different ways, different options, even if you're working on a family business and maybe that is not that big, but clients, someone that's worked with you like in a project or consultants, maybe they have worked with you. You can have a think on all these options. I guess the key thing is to make sure this person, your referee, knows you well and can be a good champion for you. Maybe someone that you have worked with 4 years ago, and then you haven't been in touch with them since, might not be the best one to tell us how you are as a professional, as maybe in 4 years you have developed and you've changed. But if, for example, you have worked with someone 4 years ago, and then you have remained in touch and that person become maybe a mentor or a support for you, then that is a good option. So I guess you need to think about all these possibilities, all these factors when selecting your referees, and then make a decision. Decide who can really be a good representative for you, and can really make your case to the committee for your strengths and your weaknesses, because anyway, you're coming to business school also to develop further. We are not perfect, no one is, and we're all learning. So it's also good when referees tell us about your potential and potential to develop.
Thank you. While browsing, I've seen lots of other questions on referees. So just to clear up a few things, you will need to select your 2 professional references and submit their names and contact details on the application form in advance of the deadline to ensure that they have time to complete the reference before, if for example you're applying for round 2, before the 5th of January. And in terms of that, before you submit their names and their contact details, of course, ensure you take the time to brief your referees, to talk to them about, first of all, ask their permission, of course, and then talk through your expectations. And we recommend that when you do that, you ensure that you don't just talk, obviously they know you professionally, that's why you're selecting them. So you don't need to talk about your expectations of what they say about you professionally, but ensure that they know why you're applying for London Business School and why you want to do an MBA. For example, if it's for a transition in sector or in industry, then ensure they're quite clear on your expectations of the MBA programme and why you're actually pursuing that. Often your referee will know you really well now and your past and what you've been doing professionally, but ensure that they're clear on your future picture as well. Hopefully that helps to clear up some of those. Or there was a question as well around length of reference. So we will ask specific questions. They will be given a word capacity to answer the questions.
There is a question about level of experience. So in terms of years of experience, our MBA program is a post-experience program, and we require at least 2 to 3 years of work experience, depending. Current average of years work experience is 2 to around 13 years of work experience, with the range with an average of 5 years of work experience. So let's say our students have a little bit more experience that compared to students from other schools. And this is due to the fact that students come to LBS from many different parts of the world, where maybe doing the MBA is not an immediate step when they start their careers. So they might decide to wait a little bit longer before going to business school, so they have a little bit more experience and they can really make the most out of the business school experience. Classes, lectures are really practical at LBS, and because everyone comes with experience, so that can be shared. And so you learn from the faculty as you learn from your peers and your classmates. So if you have, I think there is a question, if you have 1 year of experience, if it is enough for the MBA, unfortunately not, but we do offer, we have a portfolio of early careers programs that cater for that group of students that don't have enough work experience for the MBA, but might want to do a master's straight at the beginning of their career.
Okay, I think I've got a final question, which we can both answer in our own ways. Somebody has asked for quite a lot of detail in how we review and in which order we review, and I don't think we need to share that, but perhaps one part of the question is what excites us when reviewing applications. So Alessandra, have you got something that always excites you if you see it in an application?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think for me, I love my job because I can read these amazing stories from our applicants. What excites me the most is to really learn more, yes, on a professional level, but also on a personal level, and read how the MBA, how the school can really have an impact on the candidates' life, and both personal and professional. So I will say that reading the essays for me is really interesting, because really they give me the glimpse into the whole story of an applicant, and the motivations, the aspirations, what they hope to achieve. And I always put that in mind and see how the school can also have an impact on that. So that's I think for me is one thing that is very exciting. I also then personally really like to see how students progress, and I love hearing stories of successful students, successful alumni that maybe have completely transformed their careers thanks to LBS, and what and who they've met when they were in the program. So that's something fascinating that makes me really like my job.
Yeah, I think I just completely agree. I think we're both in this job because we enjoy getting to know people and relationships and speaking to people and helping people progress and almost better themselves. So that's what we enjoy about it. And for us to do that, you know, it's most exciting when you're reading an application and you can tell that somebody really is diving in and giving their whole selves, you know, and being really authentic to who they are. Which is why we talk about this authenticity through applications, because I think that makes it an easier read when you can almost get to know the person through the application, because that's really what we're trying to do. So yeah, that is the most exciting part, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we had so many questions. I think we've managed to cover lots of the topics and get through the majority. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Alessandra, for all of your insights and for joining us.
You're welcome.
We will go back now to welcoming our round 1 admits and preparing for our round 2 applications. We're really looking forward to reading them all, and we hope to see you again at an event soon. Take care.
Bye, best of luck.